This is another classic children's book, but with clear naturalist undertones. Obviously meant to teach lessons about natural law, justice, and ethics. It bridges an interesting gap between the folk tales, the legends of old, and modern fantasy in general. And it actually started an entire trend of books. It is a love of animals, of discovering our connectedness with nature. And in that sense, is a very powerful message. So if you want to get some of my thoughts on this beautiful book and the sociological implications of the work in general, stay tuned. Welcome to biblioCultist, where I review books that I find interesting in the topics of religion, philosophy, history, and fiction. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and click the bell for notifications, like the video, share the video, comment on the video. Doing these things really helps the channel out. It doesn't cost you anything, so if you like it, click the like button, share it, comment. Whatever you can do of these things really helps what I'm doing here, and I really do appreciate it. Also on the bottom, I'm going to put my socials, my X, my Ko-Fi. You can get my store there and check out the merch to promote the channel. And you can donate as well. Again, any of these things helps out. And for those that already do, I really appreciate it. In this episode, I am going over The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. And this edition is by Paper Mills Press, 2018. Now, I have a couple of the books from this press in particular, and I actually like them. They're nice, they're very inexpensive, but they do have a quality to them that makes them feel more expensive than they really are. So, at least so far, they seem to be pretty cool books to have, and again, fairly inexpensive, but get whichever edition you want. I've seen some very nice fancy editions out there, so you can go that route if you want as well. Now, this book is ordered into small tales with either common characters or at least common themes. The whole vibe of the book is about the jungle as a concept, as a reality. And of course, it's going to contain some basic fantastical or mythic elements, right? Because anytime you generalize about a world like the jungle or space, etc., it's going to contain a lot of assumptions that engender its own mythography. Nonetheless, as a concept, just to start with, it is actually an ingenious idea at the time. It starts with the classic story of the human being adopted by animals, allowing the child to slowly understand nature, the way the things are in reality, the raw aspect of nature. And that is usually the lesson in these kinds of works, that we can come from a civilized point of view, from a urban situation, but once we get to nature, we find out reality. And the basics of this book are no different. This is why stories like The Foundation of Rome are so attractive. The idea of a human being adopted by wolves or growing up in the forest and then applying these lessons to reality has always been a very powerful notion for thousands of years, actually. So even at a time when most people lived closer to nature than we do today, there was still a feeling that we should be closer to that raw reality. And let me give you a small quote from the book to set the stage a bit on this topic. Quote, "Listen, man cub," said the bear, and his voice rumbled like thunder on a hot night. "I have taught thee all the law of the jungle for all the peoples of the jungle, except the monkey folk who live in the trees. They have no law, they are outcasts, they have no speech of their own, but use the stolen words which they overhear when they listen, and peep and wait up above in the branches. Their way is not our way. They are without leaders. They have no remembrance. They boast and chatter and pretend that they are great people about to do great affairs in the jungle. But the falling of a nut turns their minds to laughter and all is forgotten. Now, what I love about that quote in particular is the criticism of those that have no law, no hierarchy, no history. This notion that certain creatures, even in the jungle, lack proper order. They're, in a way, violators of natural law. Now, of course, on its face, that's ridiculous because if the animal is within that world, he is part of the world. Not only that, but we know that primates in general do have leadership and have all these things that the animal in the story is complaining about. But the criticism is wonderfully presented because I think it's directed primarily at certain types of human beings. Modern people that waste a lot of time in idle talk, idle games, entertainment, etc. So he's using it obviously to communicate this criticism to many folks in our era as well that don't seem to care about history or education or knowledge or language, etc. As long as they're fed and given entertainment and circuses, they're happy. Also, Kipling is utilizing obvious human philosophical concepts to describe nature. And obviously, a criticism can be made that this is not realistic, meaning that if the point of the book is to teach you about raw nature, and then you inject raw nature with a complete set of philosophical axioms, then you have actually destroyed the whole point of the book. But remember, this is a children's book, and it's meant to communicate sophisticated ideas to children. Unfortunately, today, even adults that read this book will probably not realize it's meant for kids, because we have definitely devolved when it comes to our capacity for understanding in our education. And this can be proven by raw data. It's not something I'm just inventing here out of nowhere or out of some kind of pessimism. So like I mentioned, the law of the jungle is the key to this book, and it sees animals to be better and in tune with the law of the jungle, because Kipling seems to believe in a Darwinist world, a world of survival of the fittest, a world of competition, ethically and morally neutral in a way. Of course, this doesn't really show in these stories because the stories are packed with ethics, emotions, concerns that actually distort the environment. Again, it's one of the critiques of what I would call orthodox Darwinism or classic Darwinism, which seems to ignore the fact that it is assuming positions on ethics, on time, reality, emotions, and all these other human categories that really at the end of the day change the presupposition of Darwinism itself. So once you turn nature into an anthropocentric miasma of notions and emotions, you are actually not in nature anymore. At least not the way that the Darwinist means. Now, of course, we're part of nature. We have emotions. We have human conceptions of reality. We have metaphysics, philosophy. So is this part of nature? Of course. It's like the joke from George Carlin saying that when you put on a package the word all natural, well, you could put plutonium in there. You could put toxic waste and it would be technically natural because it comes from nature. So just the word natural itself is a misnomer for sure. But I know what Kipling means. The distinction between a disordered or highly controlled environment versus a free environment within the natural space, like a jungle or a forest. A good example of this dynamic and how Kipling injects a lot of human ethics into a work is the White Seal, which not only has all these points here, but it also has a religious undertone. Destiny, faith, a historical narrative. It's almost a biblical story like Job. And it's actually one of my favorites because that combination of theological exploration with the use of animals as characters is quite entertaining and quite profound as well, if you think about it. Now, the most classic here, and also one of my favorites, is Rikki-Tikki-Tavi, which most kids would know about because they usually put that story by itself or in collections, and most children have read it in one way or the other. But that story combines the clearest elements of medieval heroic tales, redemptive arc, spectacular dramatic villains, a fight against all odds, and of course one of the things that is missing in the modern world is the notion of bravery, founded on duty above personal reward. Even when you're mistreated or in some way not appreciated, your personal honor requires you to overcome that aspect of the experience for the sake of doing your duty, your honor. And Rikki-Tikki-Tavi has all of those things in one single short story. And I would say it's probably the most masterful in the entire work. The other important ideological aspect in the work is its emphasis on hierarchy, how nature itself manifests this quite clearly, how ignoring order itself brings chaos to the entire universe. And unfortunately, in the modern egalitarian mood that we live in, there's a lot of pretend equality, pretend fairness. It's all smoke and mirrors because we live in a highly stratified society. But for the sake of the survival of the upper classes, or at least the classes that control most of the resources, it is in their interest to pretend egalitarianism and inject its notion into everything that we do so that we can feel somehow that even though we work 50 hours a week with very small pay, we're somehow making independent decisions and there's no hierarchy in our society. There's no upper aristocracy, that we're all at the end of the day the same and we all have access to the same things. So it's part of a game that has been developed post-Enlightenment and has been perfected through the decades. But this work lays out a hierarchy that is obvious and clear, organic, and there's a natural feeling that most readers will get out of it that, in a way, desires society to return to at least a natural hierarchy instead of this bureaucratic nightmare that we have to live in. To finish off, this is a greatly entertaining book. It's a great collection for children. You can teach your children a lot about the world and about humanity and about ethics. And even if some of the presuppositions are modern, like some of the Darwinist aspects of the book, and some of the conceptions of justice are post-Enlightenment, it is still a great classic work that should be read by young kids and adults if you haven't read it, because it is one of those classics that everyone should at some point go through. So hopefully you enjoyed the review. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, like the video, share the video, and comment on the video. Thank you for being with me. See you next time.